So the raw video is available, and I put it on my YouTube channel, but I don't tell anybody it's there. It's just there in case you want it. And then I edit the audio, and that's what goes into the podcast.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
So 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 156 of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And as you know, once in a while, I talk myself. It's okay to talk myself and, talk about things. But today I have a guest, and I'm really excited to share with you my friend, Ken Noble, who, Ken, we've never met in real life. Well, Zoom is real life. Let's just say in person.
In person. Yeah.
But we've been on several Zoom calls together, and we've gotten to know each other. I think we've gotten to know each other over the...
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Ken is Coach. Ken, I'm going to let you do your own introduction about what you're up to these days, what you're doing, and how getting real is part of your process.
Yeah.
Tell us about you.
Absolutely. So my name is Ken Noble. I currently live in Waco, Texas, and I have my own leadership development company, Noble Leadership Solutions, where I develop people. I train leaders. I inspire the masses. Do masterminds and coaching and leadership training and development. And of course, I love to go speak in public settings and venues, MC different events and those kind of things. And so, we met through a mutual friend, and then we ended up in a little mastermind group together that lasted. I remember distinctly, it was during the February 2021 snowpocalypse that had us all shut down in Texas. I remember several of us were down here, and you were like, "Oh, you guys,
North Dakota, come on,
North Dakota." I mean, you're like, pshaw. So it's always so funny. All my northern friends are, talking about what their weather and all this stuff, and then Texas gets a half an inch of snow or ice or something, and everybody panics.
Yeah.
And all my northerner friends are just like, "You guys are ridiculous. You're pathetic."
Yeah. I don't think you're pathetic. I get it. It's all a matter of perspective, right? It's what
Absolutely. Well, I mean, our infrastructure just doesn't have the equipment to handle that kind of stuff, which is.
Didn't you guys like in that storm? Wasn't that the one that shut you all completely down? Your grid went down?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, we were without power here at my location in Waco for 3 days. I think our friend David, he was without power for something like 8 days. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty crazy. Just the different parts of Texas, how it affected everyone.
So crazy. Well, so we have a lot that we can talk about today, based on both of our mutual interest in self-awareness and personal development and a lot of things. You have a really fascinating to me background. When I met you, you were telling me about how you used to be a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And that always fascinates me about how people go from being a former pastor. Like what happens in the world that has you transition from a calling, in some cases, I guess I would think being a pastor is a calling. Not that I don't have a calling, not as a pastor, but I have another friend who also is a former pastor, and I love the journey.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to share that with us, Ken?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wasn't always a pastor. I was actually pretty much a wild child heathen, even though I grew up in a Christian home here in Texas, right? This is where I grew up in West Texas, which is about 4.5 hours from where I am now. I mean, Christianity is kind of a cultural thing. And so I was going to church and doing the things, but it just never really clicked. And then through a process of realizations and awareness, I really had a greater understanding of what it meant to be a Christian and those kind of things. And there was this spark, that calling that you mentioned, and I really felt called into ministry. And I volunteered as a pastor for 6-7 years. And then I went on staff at a larger church, about 15 to 1800 in Arkansas, and was on staff there for 6 years. And then I transferred back to West Texas, about 45 minutes from my hometown, to a mega church, and was on staff there for about 6 years. And the transition from going to a small church with no funds to a bigger church with limited funds to a mega church with a lot of funds, but still kind of limited in what you do. You see a lot of things along the way. You learn and you grow. And of course, I mean, we're all growing in the process of our life, right? We're always on this journey of growth. And I ended up at this point in my career. I mean, I loved doing the pastoral side of what I did, right? I loved Sundays, but Monday through Thursday was more more administrative, more of that daily 9 to 5 kind of feel, a lot of meetings, a lot of things that just didn't really speak to what I felt called to do and what I was passionate about doing. And this was in probably 2017, 2018 that I started feeling that. I'd gotten certified through the John Maxwell team in 2017, joined the mentorship program in, I think it was in spring, maybe early summer of 2018. And I found that I was doing masterminds in the evening with people from all over, literally all over the country. We were doing teleconference back then. Zoom was a thing, but it wasn't a thing.
That's so funny.
We were doing conference calls and masterminds, and that was great. I was enjoying it. I was helping people. I was helping them see, all the things that I loved about being a pastor. And I was taking vacation days from my job as a pastor to go and do leadership training and development for oil companies in the Permian Basin where I was. And then on the coaching side, I was doing one-on-one growth and development, right? I was doing coaching one-on-one, which is very similar to what you do as a pastor. I actually got certified through my first coaching program in 2015 while I was on staff at the same church. They actually had a class to help pastors learn to coach. And it really improved my ability to disciple and help people. And so whenever I made the transition to the John Maxwell team and started my own business, it was just kind of a side thing. I had a job, but over 2018, as my 9 to 5 Monday through Thursday began to kind of become not ideal, didn't really feed the passion, but my side gig was kind of taking off, and I was finding fulfillment in helping others and doing the things that I did as a pastor. I had an interesting conversation with the pastor that was over me, the lead pastor that was over me. And he was like, "Ken, are you happy here?" And I was like, I'm not unhappy, but I'm not happy. He said, "Well, what would make you happy?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I love to do public speaking. I love these things." And, I was like, honestly, what I'm doing with my Maxwell certification and my mentorship, I was like, that's more fulfilling to me than everything else that I'm doing Monday through Thursday. I was like, I do love the Sunday morning stuff. Don't get me wrong. But I think I probably hit some burnout at that point. One Sunday morning, I counted, I was over like 13 different things happening on a Sunday morning.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stress to it. I actually had broken out in shingles in October of 2018. Yeah. And I was like, what the heck is this? And my doctor was like, that's stress related. Mm-hmm. And so there were some stressors that were there that I wasn't really acknowledging or dealing with or knowing how to deal with. And so when he asked that question, and I was like, honestly, I'd love to, start my own business and do what I do. Because it's ministry, it's just not paid professional ministry.
Right.
And he goes, well, can you make any money at it? And of course, absolutely. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that we're in. And so we had a few more conversations over the next few months. And then in January of 2019, they came up with this kind of a golden parachute for me, really. They let me build my business for 6 months while I was on staff. Gave me some extra time off, started taking things off my plate. And then they blessed me with insurance for the remainder of the year. And so July 2019, I started my business full time. And now I was good at what I did, but I didn't know how to build a business like that, where I could actually turn the value that I had into money in my pocket to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. And so the last 3 years have definitely been an interesting journey, but that's kind of how I ended up transitioning from that pastoral role into this role, which is kind of pastoral in a lot of aspects.
Yeah. What's interesting about what you said, for anybody listening who has a pull to doing something else, if you don't listen to that, or if you don't heed that call, that stress and that feeling that you're missing something, I'm betting can become really heavy if it doesn't have an outlet. And
Yeah.
I wonder how many people in the world are experiencing that.
Oh, I would say more people experience that than not.
Yeah, I would agree. And you said, and you made another interesting observation. You said I was able to do this while I was getting insurance and while I was doing the other. And you said the last 3 years have been interesting because we don't go to entrepreneur school to learn how to be business people necessarily when we heed a call to be an entrepreneur. So that is really true for a lot of people, no matter what industry they feel called to be in when they become entrepreneurs. How have you handled that? What have you done in the last 3 years that has helped you get through that?
Well, goodness. When you have that awakening that, oh crap, I'm not as successful as I thought I was going to be. I've been diagnosed as clinically depressed, probably 2010, 2011. But in the late fall of 2019, when things weren't happening for my business like I thought they should. We had some issues go on at my home with my wife's health and some things with my son. And I ended up spiraling really down, really bad, and hit some major depression. There was a lot of factors that played into it. I'd gone to my doctor and asked, hey, I've been on this for a while. I'm feeling, some pretty heavy depression. And so we started trying to change my meds, and that just made things even worse. And so from probably October 2019 until probably September of 2020, I was virtually silent on social media. People were reaching out to me. I just couldn't function. I would do what I needed to do. Like if I had a business thing, I would go and I would do well with it. Right. I mean, leadership just oozes out of me. If you've been around me for any length of time, I can talk leadership and I can talk Jesus really, really easy. And so I could perform well in what I was doing. And a lot of that had to do because it was my calling. But then I would just go home and I would just feel, I don't know, just this vacuous void of nothingness. At the same time, of course, we found out that my father-in-law had some health issues, and I was no longer locked to a church, right? As a pastor, you don't just pick up a job in another city. You usually, someone finds you or you find someone and you end up going wherever the job is. So we ended up, taking some time fasting and praying. Felt like Waco was where we did. So ended up moving in the middle of the pandemic, right? So I'm going through this journey of depression, and then pandemic hits and shuts down everything. So any shred of, the ability to produce financial wealth was taken, and so we ended up moving to Waco in June of 2020. And I went and got a job, a job, a 9-to-5er. And every morning when I got up to do this job, I heard echoing in my soul, you can work hard to build your dream, or somebody else will pay you to work hard to build yours. And after about a week, and I'm not as young as I used to be. It was a very labor intensive job. My wife was like, stop killing yourself. I was making like $16 an hour or something. It was just whatever I could do to get some income. And she's like, why are you killing yourself? She's like, go do what you love. And my father-in-law was like, he's business mindset. And he's like, Ken, you've invested so much in your business. You're great at what you do. Go do what you love. And I was like, okay. I worked for 1 week and I went in that next Monday, dressed up, and he's like, you don't look like you're dressed for work today. And I was like, no, sir. It's like, I hate to tell you this, but I can't do this. I got to go build my business, do what I'm called to do. And so I joined the Waco Chamber and joined a couple of business groups like BNI and Master Networks, which you're familiar with, and just kind of launched out into the entrepreneurial world, starting over from scratch in a community where I knew no one, in the middle of a pandemic. I just put on my big boy panties, and and I just went and did what I needed to do. And along the way, a friend of mine from the John Maxwell team, he does sales during the day for an oil company, and he started coaching me on sales. I had another friend that helped me with branding and marketing when I first started. She was reaching out and helping me. And, I just really got into a community of people that wanted to help me succeed. And then, of course, through that, I found, our mutual friend David, and talking with him, he's like, "Oh man, we can definitely use you." And I started just kind of networking in my area through Master Networks, which is a networking organization. And here I am. And through that, I met you, and our other friend Grant, and some amazing people. And so I'm just out here day by day. And everybody always asks me, "Well, how did you overcome that depression?" And really, I just didn't have time to be depressed. You know what I mean? It's like, I can either sit at home and sulk, or I can get out and go make things happen. And I wish it was some, supernatural story of, oh, it's everything's butterflies and daisies now. Every day is a fight. I mean, yeah, there are certain days where I can feel depression just kind of knocking on the door saying, "Let me in." And especially when my energy's low, or things aren't going well with my physical therapy, or some things like that. I'm just like, oh. But I just keep taking the steps, reaching out to people around me, and staying solid in the community. I mean, that's one of the things that we talked about in our mastermind, a couple of years ago, was that community and what that really is like. And so that's what drew me to you and to the Get Real community, and some of the mutual friends that we have.
Yeah. So it sounds, you've kind of glossed over a little this. I want to touch on a few of those points, because yes, sure, we can just muscle our way through, and yes, you just pick yourself up, put on your big boy panties. Yes, all those things are true. Yes. And the reality, right? The reality is, I'm not an expert in mental health at all, not even a little bit. I'm a life purpose and career coach. So I know there are mental health issues that I don't want to make it sound like you can just muscle your way through that. You have experienced that. There are medical issues. There are things that are, I'm guessing, how would I say it? They're just chemical imbalances, perhaps, right?
Yeah. And part of the community that I got for the support was I went to a psychiatrist.
Okay.
Right. And so I was like, this is where I'm at. This is where I've been. This is what I've struggled with, and can you help me? And he's like, yeah, let's do this. Let's try that. And so, I mean, yeah, it's not like I just, threw caution to the wind and just muscled my way through it. I mean, I was seeing I still see a psychiatrist, started seeing a psychologist, because I think there may be some ADHD issues involved. We over the years, we've seen mental health kind of in our immediate family. My wife has struggled with it for a long time, and she's been on medication for a long time. She hit a major depressive disorder episode in 2017. It's been this ongoing journey over the last probably 5-6 years of dealing with my wife, and then dealing with my son, then dealing with me, and then my youngest daughter. She came to us after we moved here, and she said, I think I need some help. I feel like I'm depressed. And so yeah, we've had this ongoing journey of mental health and learning coping mechanisms, and caring for one another, and supporting one another all through it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you don't just, okay, I'm not going to be depressed today.
Yeah. Well, and what I heard you say too is that there was something in you that said, it's more important that I connect. It's more important that I find my tribe, find people who can support me, than it is that I don't. And I guess we've heard a lot about suicide recently. I've heard a lot about people who are taking their own lives because they don't see a way out. So I know this is not anything to be taken lightly. And what I'm hearing you say is, if you ask for the help, if you seek for the help, it's there for you, whether it's medical professionals, whether it's networking professionals, friends, family.
Yeah. And it's not like every time a friend reached out to me, I was just automatically better. I remember when I was still in Midland, and I first was going through this major depression, like moving to a new location kind of helped to some degree. It kind of put me in a new environment. But when I was there and I had friends that would say, "Hey, Ken, let's go to lunch." And I just remember sitting there and just weeping, going, "I don't know what's wrong with me." I mean, I was a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, I didn't stop praying. I didn't stop reading my Bible. I didn't stop journaling. Actually, one of my spiritual mentors had me go back and reread through my journals. And so I've been doing that recently of that time in my life, and just kind of reminding myself what God said to me in those moments. And, even in the darkest of times, I never felt suicide was an option.
Mm-hmm.
That was just something, I guess, because spiritually it was kind of ingrained in me, even though heaven would be much better than earth. I just felt like that is really not what I was called to do. Like I knew I had purpose. I knew I had something bigger to do. I just couldn't get my mental health in gear to make that happen and overcome the obstacle after obstacle after obstacle that I felt that I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very interesting journey, and it's not to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
And my number one thing to anybody struggling with mental health is ask for help.
Yeah.
Um, I wish it were, I wish that there were, things were more affordable for sure for people, but it just, it is what it is. And, we had to make sacrifices in order to get to the point where we were able to take care of myself and, the rest of my family in those areas, in those arenas.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think if we look deep enough, and maybe I'm Pollyanna about this, maybe I'm really too rosy colored glasses, but if we look deep enough, I want to believe that there are resources out there that can help us if we reach out, because it sounds to me like you were at a point at which financially things weren't going the way they could, and yet you found the support you needed. And now when we're looking forward through that pandemic, through all of that, that was the weirdest time that I think any of us have ever experienced. Here we are on the other side of at least that part of it. I'm not saying it's over and done yet. Here we are. We are stronger, maybe stronger in our faith because of what we've had to experience. And again, that could be a rose-colored glasses kind of way of saying that. And would you say that going through that has helped you at this point more than it's hurt you, or hurt you more than it's helped you?
Well, I may be a little bit rose-colored glasses as well, because I think for me, I think that I don't know that everything happens to us for a reason, right? Necessarily. I know some people say that, and there was a friend of mine posted that she didn't believe that, and I had to comment. But there's something to be learned in everything that happens to us.
Can I just jump in there for a second? A friend of mine told me this during 2020, maybe it was 2021. I can't even remember. He said, what if we believed that everything happens for a reason, and we've believed that, and we've said that, and that helps us at some point to believe that there is a reason behind things. But he said, if things happen for a reason, many of us have to feel that we need to find that reason. We need to get in our heads and get all reasonable about it. He said, what if things actually happen for a purpose that's larger than a reason? Because given your experience and background with being a pastor, and I certainly have faith as well, I believe there's a creator out there who has a purpose for us that might be beyond my ability to reason it. And that's where faith comes in for me.
Yeah. I think I would agree. I think that everything has a purpose within it. I don't know that everything happens for a reason. And I think part of our journey of humans, spiritual beings being in this physical plane of existence, is doing everything we can to learn from whatever situation we're in, and find the good in it. I recently had this accident, and and everybody was, how can you be so positive about it and all these things? And it's because I'm looking and saying, okay, I know this happened, and it was my fault. It was clearly, I was a distracted driver. It was totally my fault. And so what can I learn from this? Well, one, I learned not to drive distracted anymore. That's the biggest takeaway, right? So I'm a much safer driver. I still wrestle with certain things, but I'm a much safer driver. I learned that I have a strong community of people here in Waco that love and support me. I had people bringing food, visiting me in the hospital, giving me rides before I could drive, all of those kind of things. I mean, there was so much to learn, even in something that most people would go, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Is it terrible, or is it just an accident? I mean, so I think that there's something to be learned in every situation.
Yeah.
Even the depression, I learned that what I think God should do and when he should do it isn't necessarily what God thinks he should do and when he should do it.
Right.
I really learned during this whole season that being an entrepreneur is about having faith, whether you're a Christian believer or not. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever. In order to move forward as an entrepreneur, you have to have faith. You have to have faith that it's going to work, that this business is going to succeed, that you can do it, right? It's faith. I don't care if you're an atheist, you have faith that your business is going to be successful. Otherwise, you're not going to put your money into it and do it.
Right. Right. So now you kind of skimmed over this accident.
Okay.
But this accident, I mean, it seems to me that this was kind of I'm going to call it a wake-up call, because you've told me that things have shifted since this accident happened. Do you want to talk a little bit more? You said distracted driving. You were texting and driving. You told me before. And how many of us have ever done that?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I was one of those, that'll never happen to me kind of guys.
Yep.
So there's a lot at play into what happened to in this accident. It was late at night. I was very tired. I was preparing for a presentation, a lunch and learn the next day. I MC trivia at a local brewery on Wednesday nights, and usually I take a nap because I know it's going to be a later night. I was busy preparing, and I was mentally and just physically exhausted before I ever even started. And my 21-year-old daughter, she has Down syndrome, and this is kind of her big social event of the week. And so she was there with me. And after we closed, we were hanging out with the owner, and it got to be really, really late. And I literally almost had to drag her out. It's about 11:45 at night, and we're driving home through just back roads, small little back roads, small community. And we come to a red light, and I stop and I pick up my phone to let my wife know that we're on our way home. She's a hospice nurse, and she was out on call at midnight that night. And as soon as I picked up my phone, the light turned green. And so I just put my foot on the accelerator and started driving forward, totally looking at my phone. My truck had drifted to the right side. And just as I set my phone down, there was this bam, and I freaked out. I'd hit a curb. And so I yanked it. And when I yanked it, I almost did a 90-degree turn straight into a traffic light post that hung over the road, that blinked 35 miles an hour for the school zone. And I wasn't going 35, 45 miles, 30, 40 miles an hour, but the way I hit, I literally missed the frame of my truck, and it hit at the headlight and just kind of crushed everything onto me. My daughter was fine. She had some glass scratches and some things like that. She called 911. I'd been knocked unconscious. I was kind of in and out of consciousness. And when the ambulance got there, they, opened the door, got her out. She was fine. 2 days later, she had a little seatbelt bruise that showed up. But all in all, she was fine. She ended up going to the ER and had to wait 4 hours. It took 25 minutes for the jaws of life to get me out.
Oh my goodness.
And while extracting me, there was some damage to my foot. I had several broken bones. One of them was a femur, a fractured hip. I had stitches in my elbow and my shin. I was just a mess. And, I'm thinking, I'm going to be okay. My wife shows up at the ER. I'm like, honey, I'll be fine. I've just broken my leg. I'll probably be out tomorrow on some crutches. Ended up spending 12 days in the hospital. And while in the hospital, I'm paying attention to everything around me. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", and right now I'm at 75 pounds, right? But at the time I was about 315 to 320. And it was taking all of these people to move me. It was, all these things that were going on. And, we had to order special wheelchair. We had to get, special things because I'm so big. And I mean, at the time, I was a large man and I was overweight, but I carried it okay. But in my mind, I knew that I was probably 90 pounds overweight. I mean, I knew it to be true. And so going through all of that, talking with my psychiatrist about some things that had happened when I got out, and we were having some discussions, and he said, it sounds like you've got an eating disorder. And he's like, we need to work on some cognitive behavioral therapy when you get a little bit further down the road. And I was like, no, I'm going to start today. Mm-hmm. And I've been on healthy eating plans before. I know what to do, but my self-care had taken such a backseat for so long that I didn't care about myself. I wasn't taking care of myself, which all of these things, right? Giving, I've got to give to the people that I'm presenting for. I've got to give to this thing. I've got to give to my daughter, I've got to, and I'm just, placating myself and getting those dopamine hits by, I was drinking whiskey on my back porch several times a night. I'm just consuming all these unhealthy things. I was doing 3-4 cigars a day sometimes, and I realized that if I wanted to be the best that I could be, I had to make some changes. And so I started making some changes. Immediately when I got out of the hospital, I started paying attention to portion control. Someone was brought into my community that said, hey, I want to help you with your diet and your nutrition. He's a nutritionist. I mean, very well known, has a great podcast. And he's like, dude, I want to help you. And so I just got off the Zoom with him earlier. Right. And so I've lost between 40 and 45 pounds. My scale at home is, when I'm standing on the crutches, I'm a little shaky. So it's kind of this 5-pound variance. But I'm doing my best to make healthy choices in my eating, in my lifestyle. I have 1 cigar a day, which, it's in the morning. I'm trying to be intentional, and especially going through this, I've learned that as my body's healing, I don't have the endless energy that I used to have. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I have to pick and choose what I'm going to say no to. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm learning all of these things as I'm going through this while still trying to build my business.
Yeah.
And so it's been a fantastic journey over this last 6-8 months now since my accident and all those other things.
It's so interesting because when you hear stories and we're inspired by people who speak or write books or have podcasts and there's something, it feels like, that they had to overcome, or something that caused an awakening or a new way of seeing things. And it's true for you too. And for all of us who are doing this work, this personal development work on ourselves, if we're doing it for other people, we can hide it. You said you were a big guy, that you carried it well. We can disguise things. But the difference between doing what you think is the best to do until something has you, rethink, and what happens after that is night and day. I remember doing the Landmark Forum in 2003, and I remember what I learned in 2003. It was just mind altering for me. And I came back and told people, and they said, but you've always done that. And I'm like, no, I was faking. I didn't know I was faking, right? I was doing the best I could. But the difference for those of us who I guess are good fakers or were at the time, maybe it's not outwardly as obvious, but when you're 40 pounds lighter, and I can even see it in Zoom, right? Yeah. And you, the energy that we put into the world is what people recognize, I think. Don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's funny, the whole concept of this is, get real. And it was when I was in the hospital and dealing with insurance, about, hey, he's a 48-year-old male, he's got a broken femur or whatever. He can go home. He doesn't need inpatient rehab. And they're like, no, he's 320 pounds. If he falls down at home, there's nobody there to get him up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I had to get real with myself that I was in such an unhealthy place. You know, even though my labs were fine and all the things, right? Like I hid behind that. Well, I don't have high blood pressure. It's kind of high, but I don't need medication. So I'm not that bad, right? We justify until you say, okay, I've got to get real with myself about where I am and the struggles that I'm dealing with, you know, and the frictions that it has caused, and go, okay, I've got to deal with these things, you know, and once again, it's about getting those people in your community, getting people that are going to speak to you and speak honestly to you and hold you accountable to do the things that you say you're going to do. I mean, that's how you're going to grow your business. That's how you're going to grow yourself personally. That's how you're going to grow yourself spiritually, mentally, physically, you know, all of those things. It requires a good, solid community. And you know, I know that you invest a lot in your community and you talk about it a lot. You actually, I got to just brag on you. You actually helped me to really understand what a mastermind was. You know, I read Think and Grow Rich, and of course I understood the concept, but one of my mentors taught me that a mastermind was kind of this book study / you know, we're coming with this agenda. And there were times when we would show up to the mastermind and you were leading and you go, okay, so this mastermind isn't just us, it's because we're here, this third mind comes into being. And I just love that. And I was like, yes, this is the kind of way a mastermind should be run. And I love to run them that way now. And I call a book study now, right? Instead of calling it a mastermind.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's about having those pieces, you know, and you and I had some discussions when there were times when it was just you and I showing up for our meeting, and we had some discussions and you helped me walk through some things. And, you know, I think having people around you that you let in and that you're vulnerable with is key to overcoming all the obstacles in our lives. You know, whether it was depression, whether it was this accident, whether it's me dealing with this eating disorder, you know, and right now I've been kind of jokingly calling myself ADHD for years, but back in 2010 or 11, my counselor said, hey, you have some ADHD tendencies, and I never dealt with it. And so now I'm at this place in my life where I'm not as effective in my business as I want to be, even though I know the things to do. I can't seem to do them, right? To quote Paul from the book of Romans, right? And so I know there's something deeper. And so it's like, okay, I want to go get checked out and see if this ADHD thing is real or if it's just me being disorganized.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that right now. And so, yeah, the journey is an onward process, and none of us should ever stop growing into the person we're designed to be.
Yeah. So good. Well,
I don't want to say supposed to be, or should be, right?
But created to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the whole platform that we're on here at Real was born in 2020 in the height of the pandemic, because I needed to figure things out for myself. So Real means radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. And the R, radical, does not mean wild, crazy out there. What we're talking about is getting back to the root and getting back to what makes us us. And when we do that, and that it can be really hard work to uncover those things you're uncovering, but it seems radical because very few people do it, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
So radical, energized, we're understanding that. Authentic is just being who we were created to be. And then L, you just referred to that. It's learning focused, which means it's a journey forever. We're always uncovering things and learning. So that's what it means to be real, Ken. And what you're explaining for us here and sharing in your vulnerable and open way, I think allows other people then to do the same thing in their own lives without shame, without justification, without any defensiveness. Because what really connects us, Brene Brown tells us, we don't connect with perceived perfection. We connect with vulnerability and authenticity.
Yep.
So if any of us are looking to connect with that tribe or that group or those people who really are there to support and help us when we need it, we have to go first, don't we?
Absolutely. one of my mentors, she was a mentor when I was doing youth ministry. She's world famous, been doing youth ministry for, gosh, probably close to 50 years at this point. She used to tell us we lead with our strengths, but we connect with our weaknesses.
Oh, that's good.
And it's the truth. It's when people understand what we're going through, or we feel that connectedness of, oh, they're not perfect, they're vulnerable, they've made mistakes, they know where I've been.
Mm-hmm.
Right. One of my current mentors, he's failed in like 7 or 8 different businesses, but he's always, ever since we connected, he's been cheering me on and rooting for me. And it's like, okay, I need to hang out with you, and that's what I'm going to do. And so it's been a fight to maintain that regimen, but he's helping me grow my business by not letting me sit in the shadows. That's kind of why I'm on the podcast.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's like, Ken, you're too big of a person, not just my size, but he's like, you're too big of a person. You've got so much to give,
right?
And you hide in the shadows. You kind of poke your head out like the groundhog, see your shadow, and then retreat back. He goes, you'll have a really good month in your business, and then you won't have anything in your business. And stop being scared, get out and tell your story, let people know who you are, and let people have an opportunity to find you. And so that's what led me on the journey of, finding podcasts to be on. And so it's an honor to be on yours for sure.
Oh, well, you fit the bill so well. And I'm so grateful that you are willing to tell your story so authentically and so really,
Yeah.
and that I can support you in building your business as well. So how would people find you, Ken? What's the best way?
Okay. Well, you can find me on most major social media platforms at the Ken Noble, TheKenNoble.
Okay.
I was lucky enough to kind of get on all the social media platforms. Of course, you can always email me through my website, nobleleadershipsolutions.com.
Okay. We'll put all that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to get in touch with.
Awesome.
So yeah, I love helping people, even if it's just, a one-time phone call consult,
Nice.
And helping somebody strategize what their next steps are.
So strategy, speaking, I'm guessing, you'd love to be speaking at events. Coaching people. So if you're looking for something that you heard here that you'd like more information about, please look up Ken Noble, the Ken Noble, and you will be so glad you did. I'm speaking from personal experience. So Ken, thank you so much for being with us.
Yes,
and everybody else, as always, get real. Talk to you again. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm just going to stop recording. Stop recording. Okay. Yeah.